a very fundamental level, many people feel that confidence is intelligence, and that the way to be more intelligent is to dissimulate confidence, to feign confidence. Habits of mind are easily misperceived as innate character traits. What you may perceive as self-confidence in me is a process of constant worrying, but productive worrying. Being smart involves worrying. It involves worrying all the time. It requires that you're constantly paying attention not to things you already know and understand, but to the limits of your understanding. Necessarily and by definition, the things that you are just barely confident with, things you are curious about, things that you haven't mastered yet, things you don't yet feel confident speaking on. The title of this video might seem like parody or self-parody, but the truth is, when you look around the internet, you see a lot of people who are asking themselves this question and who are looking for answers to questions very much like this one, but they tend to phrase it in such a way as to avoid admitting blatantly that they feel dumb, that they feel lost, that they feel hopeless, or that they feel that others have an advantage in life that they haven't quite sorted out for themselves. And the truth is, all of us have felt that way. Unless you're an amnesiac, unless you can't remember your childhood due to years of alcoholism or something, all of us have gone through sometimes years and sometimes decades of feeling that way. And that is the subject of this video. But what I see on the internet is people yearning for advice, simply and bluntly, as to how they can be more intelligent or how they can live their lives more intelligently. And what they end up with is this sort of self-help motivational advice. It's really antithetical to their purposes. There's another YouTuber who was speaking really passionately about this apothegm he'd managed to get from a self-help manual that told him, your problem isn't that you need to be highly motivated to go out and accomplish great things. You just have to get out there and start accomplishing great things in order to feel highly motivated. Now, whether or not this is good or bad advice, what is the ideological function for the reader, for the believer, in reading this and getting excited about it? On a very fundamental level, many people feel that confidence is intelligence, and that the way to be more intelligent is to dissimulate confidence, to feign confidence. And this is in fact stupidity, and it is the road to remaining ignorant, to inculcating and defending your stupidity. It's true that, for example, in a movie, we associate a certain kind of confidence with an intelligent actor or an actor playing the role of a brilliant scientist. Confidence, looking from the outside in, is how we perceive someone who already knows what they're doing. But that's not what intelligence is. That's not the way to become smart. That's not the way to learn or gain that same competence that might lead you to feel confident in one scenario or another. Being smart involves worrying. It involves worrying all the time. It requires that you're constantly paying attention not to things you already know and understand, but to the limits of your understanding. Necessarily and by definition, the things that you are just barely confident with, things you are curious about, things that you haven't mastered yet, things you don't yet feel confident speaking on. I saw another YouTuber who's quite notorious for being stupid just today, Sargon of Akkad. If you agree with him politically, fine. If you hate him and despise him politically, fine. But he's stupid. Like, if you agree with him, that has nothing to do with whether he is intelligent or stupid. There was this wonderful demonstration of both why and how he's stupid and of what stupidity really means in practice. where he had this sort of spontaneous, unscripted stream of consciousness political rant. And at first he's ranting about things he's been reading on Twitter lately, specifically things written by socialists and left-wing people whom he's criticizing. And of course in that, he knows what he's talking about because he's actually read these things on Twitter. He's responding to them. And then he moves on to criticizing a few other YouTubers. And these other YouTubers are actually people he knows personally, and he's watched their videos. So, in a sense, he knows what he's talking about. He's conversing. He's confident. He's exuding this, boisterous confidence that his audience responds to and they like about him. And then, he took a next step and he started talking about what happened in the French Revolution, like circa 1789 to 1794. He hasn't even read the Wikipedia article on the French Revolution. He doesn't know what he's talking about at all. But he maintains this momentum, this confidence. He's not even aware that he's taking a step from something he can and should be confident or at least relaxed speaking about into another province where he should worry. He should be worried. Now, being worried doesn't mean you have to act worried. You can say to someone in a completely self-confident way, I don't know. You can say to someone in a self-confident way, I wish I knew more about that. I'd like to take the time and do something. I don't know. There's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong. There's nothing weak about that. You can seem strong and self-confident while saying to someone, this is the limit of my knowledge. This is what I've read. This is what I know. This is what I don't know. All right? Intelligent people are those who are constantly aware of these fences, if you like, at the limits of their knowledge and who are always worried about them. They're people who are aware of when they take that step from their own area of competence to incompetence. And this doesn't mean they're people who are afraid to take that step, right? On the contrary, I think if you're an intelligent person, you worry about the limits of your knowledge productively. You worry about what it is you don't know. You get curious about what it is you don't know, and then you have investigated to some extent, and then you know it, right? You can't research absolutely everything under the sun, right? But in this way, you start living your life intelligently, and thus, therefore, you become a smart person with time, with effort, right? Habits of mind are easily misperceived as innate character traits. Nothing you're seeing about me right now is innate. I fashioned myself into the man that I now am. There was a time when I spent my youth sitting on the carpet playing Sega Master System, playing video games. I watched the same terrible TV shows everyone else in my generation watched. I had a terrible formal education. I grew up with all the same disadvantages as pretty much everyone else in my society. And how did I worm my way out of that? I was dissatisfied. I was rapacious. I wanted more. Right? And when I look back at my life, I only wish that I had wanted more sooner and earlier, and that I hadn't accepted compromises and excuses, right? I accepted at a very young age that I would never read Aristotle. Why? I could make a separate video reflecting on that. That there were some things that were unknowable or too hard for me to read. It's not true. Of course I could have read Aristotle, I would have helped if I had parents who encouraged me or something, it would have helped if you have a tutor or get something, right? I accepted at an early age that I could never learn Latin and I could never learn Greek. I went on later in life to learn languages that are much, much more difficult than Latin and Greek, and I'm learning much more difficult language now. I wouldn't call this discouragement. I wouldn't even say that it was that I felt stupid. It's that I thought these things were impossible and unknowable and untouchable for me. Other things weren't so. A lot of you don't know this, but when I was a young man, I was very interested in theoretical physics. I read books about, research into how gravity works and how dark matter works and the formation of star systems. I did that, and I was thinking about making that my career, and I decided against it for various reasons. But, that didn't seem intimidating to me, to read about physics. But some things seemed impossible to me, and I didn't question them. I didn't get motivated in the way that I'm motivated now. Just to mention, I mean, research we're doing right now in this department includes the history of Central Asia, places like Tajikistan and Uzbekistan. Is it easier or more difficult to learn the history of Athens or to learn the history of Tajikistan and Uzbekistan? This is not the most difficult research. And this is, casually at all times, I'm expanding my knowledge of the world, and I'm challenging my own ignorance. I'm aware of the limits of my knowledge. Some of these things I'm aware of for years before I can get around to them. For years and years and years. I had already done research on the French Revolution, and I had never done research on the English Civil War. It could be called the English Revolution that came before it, and I knew there was an important dynamic relationship between them. I knew I had to get around to that sooner or later. And a couple years ago with my girlfriend, I did that research. So what am I describing here? What you may perceive as self-confidence in me is a process of constant worrying, but productive worrying. Not worrying for the sake of worrying, but worrying so that I'm aware of the limits of my knowledge, so that I'm aware of my own ignorance, and so that I'm challenging my own ignorance. But I would never do what Sargon of Akkad did in striding over that boundary where you're commenting on Twitter, you're commenting on YouTube, and then you're commenting on the French Revolution, and you're not, oh, hey, I'm now talking about something I haven't read, something I don't really know for myself. This business of confusing confidence for intelligence, I think also is at the root of what people reach out for and what they end up grasping onto in self-help books. Just think of this, marvelous, grand, useless piece of wisdom that the other YouTuber got so inspired by. You don't need to be motivated to accomplish great things. You need to get out and start accomplishing things so that you can feel motivated. Why do people seek out these kinds of catchphrases? And what is their real function? It's a very strange sort of reassurance. It's reassuring you that there's nothing here you need to worry about, that there isn't something you don't know that's going to make you incapable of achieving your objectives and aims. And real wisdom involves precisely that gnawing doubt being with you at all times. Not to live your life despite doubt, but to live your life with doubt, informed by doubt. Let doubt sharpen your senses at all times. Let your awareness of the limits of your own experience and expertise, whet your appetite for learning. And don't cling on to these catchphrases that are, in the parlance of our times, thought-terminating cliches.